Hello everyone. I want to make this video on, well, today's a new moon in Aquarius, and this new moon is conjunct Saturn. So this feels like a really great time to introduce this very important and essential transit that's occupying most of 2022. This is Saturn in Aquarius square in the nodal axis. So let's start off by sharing the transits. We can take a look at this. Here we have Saturn on the ascendant. Let's go to animation. This is not today, so let me just, here we go. Moon and sun just about to conjunct in Aquarius. Notice the nodes at 28 degrees Scorpio moving backwards and Saturn moving forward through Aquarius. So over the next several weeks, watch Saturn and watch the nodes. Saturn's at 16, nodes at 27. Saturn at 17, nodes at 27. So already in just a couple weeks, we can say Saturn enters that 10-degree orb to the nodal axis by mid-February. We can really say it's starting today. It's this new moon where there's an energizing of the Saturn archetype. Just a couple weeks before Saturn actually enters a 10-degree orb to the squares, that we're really entering the energetic field of this 2022 theme of Saturn square in the nodes. Let's just look a little further and then I'll take a step back and define this a little more. So as we progress, let's go to April. Saturn's already at 22, the nodes are at 22. So it doesn't take very long, just a month and a half until this 10-degree orb bridges completely. And then Saturn stays really close because we move a little more forward in Aquarius. In June, or end of May, June, Saturn will go retrograde. And it stays within a few degrees of the nodes for quite a time, all the way to the end of the year. Going backwards, by the time we're in October or so, Saturn is just still 5 degrees away from the nodes, and so forth. So it's really tight. It's really connected to the nodal axis, starting now through the end of the year. And just to show you what it's like at the very end of the year itself, in December, Saturn's at 21, the nodes are at 12. So even then, just a 9-degree orb. So we can see that it's a very tight approach, and they come to a culmination, an exact square in April. So this is a very heightened and focused time, and we can actually say, since it's just really moving up there to April, from now until April, there's like a quickened and intensified focus. So what I want to do is define the Saturn in Aquarius archetype, speak about what's emerging right now on this new moon, and just introduce this Saturn in Aquarius squaring the Scorpio-Taurus nodal axis. Let's tune in for a moment. So wherever we have Saturn, we're looking at how we are both becoming aware of our existing posture, the conditioning, how we've maintained a habit of thought and thus action and thus manifestation within physical reality. And we're all living within a particular framework of structure. And this structural reality reflects the conditioning of our consciousness. The particular constructs of life that we come into itself is karmically relevant to the internal reality of our consciousness. And in many ways, we can say we've inherited and we've developed habits one way or another. Where we are right now, we can say that we're sort of a predictable machine. Consciousness creates a groove and it becomes familiar. It becomes acclimated to a way of being. It's habituated. It's a very interesting thing, by the way, to think about. Consciousness, or the nature of the soul, or our being as free and eternal. We're not by our very nature habitual, right? It's not natural to a state of freedom. It's not natural to the undefined, to the unconditioned, to be habitual. But we've created that. We've become conditioned by construct, by self-identity. And so there's a way of holding ourselves in a particular posture, a particular way of being. And the issue with Saturn relative to our conditioned patterns is it can really feel like it's who we are. It can really feel like this is my gender, my society, my job, my role, what's right, what's not right, what's not okay, what's who I have to be. There's so much of our reality tends to be unconsciously held in check by these really strong assumptions that are kind of rooted in this unquestioned morality or ethic, right? Just what has to be. And I always like to say that relative to Saturn, all rules, all structures, all that which is conditioned never ever reflects something that's eternally true. All structure and all rules, all conditions are relevant to a particular context. So, even stopping at a red light, it's a rule, but what's a rule? A rule is just, this is useful and functional for maintaining a useful cooperation with society, right? It works. If you want to be able to drive and not get in an accident and get somewhere, we have these structures and these rules in place, but that's all it is. Like, a rule isn't like some kind of divine morality coming from the sky that says you broke the rule and you're bad. Like, rules they're just social constructs, familial constructs, governmental constructs that allow for a particular kind of functioning in the world. That's it. And then there are repercussions if you break the rules, and that's just something that we've set up. Where we associate all kinds of judgment and shame and constructs of bad. I shared in some video this insight I once had that, there's no such thing as wrong as like an absolute quality of, like, wrong doesn't exist. There's right. Right, we can say, is alignment. Like, life is right, reality is right, that which is right from the point of view of it's true. And there isn't not true. Like, not true doesn't exist, right? What's not real doesn't exist. And so wrong, a more compassionate understanding and interpretation of the energetic of wrong, is simply not right. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say you're wrong, or that there is some sort of original existence called wrong. You know what I'm saying? That there is some sort of polarity to life that says right exists and wrong exists. It's more like right, and then you missed the mark. And in most cases, our missing of the mark is just, that's not functional. It doesn't work so well, right? If you're going to run outside on gravel without putting your shoes on, it's not a good idea. It's not functional. Or if you're going to run a red light, it's not a good idea. It's not what you want to do if you want to do functional activity here on this planet. Not get your feet hurt, not get into an accident. But we so often mistake these ideas of wrong as these absolute judgments, as if it's like an original construct of reality, as if God created right and wrong. And it's really important to understand that, because all rules exist only in a relative context. And the breaking of the rule simply means life isn't as functional. It's harder. But what happens? You learn. You don't pass the test. Nothing happens. You just don't pass the test. And there's something profoundly compassionate about this understanding of time. What we don't get right, we just don't get right. And there are repercussions to that relative to the particular structural reality we're part of, our school, our government, society, the body. But that's it. And then you try again. You get it right. You die eventually and you try again. There's an ongoing process of manifesting experience within time and space in order to work with time and space in ways that foster and nurture a state of alignment. To do things right. It's participating and functioning in this world in a way that works, that's helpful to our evolutionary growth. And if we want to just get things done really quickly and move on and not really have to attend consciously to the life that we're living and bring thoughtfulness to where we get to grow and evolve and learn, then we'll just find that this quick adolescent attitude isn't going to help, right? We'll be weighed down by these root chakra issues that says, oh, I want to do all these things in life. I have these spiritual aspirations or, financial aspirations or these goals in life, but these core root chakra issues, I don't have enough money. I can't seem to pay the bills on time. I'm always late. I have car issues. I'm always getting tickets. I'm not passing the test. So Saturn on the most basic level, just this way in which you're always being guided back to the rules, not to be defined by them, not to identify some sort of absolute morality, but to understand how to work within them. But as I began saying, there's this dimension to Saturn where we're all conditioned and we've developed certain habits. So to learn how to operate in a functional and useful way, we have to become incredibly self-reflective and really self-knowledgeable, because this is not about doing blindly what we're told to do or fitting into the constructs of, being a good citizen or following the rules or doing the right thing according to really anyone or anything outside. We each have to figure this out for ourselves, right? We know in the world right now, there are so many social, global, political, moral issues on the table. Many different people will have their own inner sense of what's right. And some people's sense of what's right will conform more or less to what their local or federal government might say. Other people's sense of what's right might conform more to what their church or their own political party is saying. Or they might just be kind of determining it according to their own views, or they might have a group of friends that shares a particular idea. Right? We always have to come back to that introspective place where we look at what's alignment. And there's a quality of looking at an inner knowing, not source on the outside, not source in social approval, in what we might project as our parents or authority figures or political figures or friends might approve of, but an inner knowing. There's a teaching in the Talmud. This was my yearbook quote in 12th grade. "B'makom she'ein anashim tishadel liot ish." In a place where there are no people, strive to be a person. There's one occasion where 12th grade prank, some boys took a dead chicken that they found outside and put it on a table in the cafeteria, and it just sit there. They thought it was funny. I saw that and immediately I thought, okay, this is probably not a good idea. It's not clean. You can have, all kinds of bacteria. So I took it, just grabbed it, threw it away, got the janitor to, didn't make a fuss out of it, didn't care to tell on them, just dealt with it. And that was my internal orientation. That was my sense of the right thing to do. It might mean being ridiculed or not being like the cool kid or whatever, but within myself, that was the right thing to do. We have to gauge that for ourselves. And this Saturn in Aquarius is really emphasizing that, because what Aquarius always does is it naturally sets our self-awareness apart from the status quo. And the status quo is not just other people or life or society, it's the patterning that we've established. It's our own familiarity of being. It's our own patterns. Right? And so much of our patterns is conditioned by something that's unchecked. What we've just been doing for years, or how we've known ourselves to be as a human, as a friend, as a person, as a family person, as a member of society. But there's a need to really look at, but what's my inner guidance? What are my standards for living? What's my sense of alignment? And there are certain emotional gauges that will inform us when we're not feeling in alignment. One is depression, right? Depression is where we are trying to fit ourselves into something that isn't livable. It's not breathable. Maybe we're following the rules or existing within a construct of reality, but at some point, somehow, we've become identified with the rules. There's a very interesting thing. If you go to a different country that has different mannerisms, different social patterns, it's very easy to observe how certain patterns are just sort of accepted as how to act, how to behave. It might be rude if you don't conform to those behaviors. It's easier to notice that when we step outside of the conditioned context of our own culture and society. We can see that. And, or, you meet any person, you get to know them, you watch as Aquarius, an observer, you'll notice any human being, there are these ways of being that you'll notice, oh, wait, they think they are that. Oh, interesting. We all do this. And it's easy to observe if we take that space of observer and we're looking at a context that's just kind of so unfamiliar to us. Like, oh, I can tell that there's a strong identification here. This person needs to be seen as this. They need to fit into this idea, this identity. Interesting, because we can see it's just a projection of the mind. We can see clearly that none of these things actually have any inherent meaning in terms of who we are. And so many of the constructs that we've identified with, they start off as maybe qualities of wisdom or insight, like a lot of traditions and the practices and the traditions that come from these ancient lineages. So much of it, I feel, is rooted in this deeper wisdom. But when anything becomes ritualized and habituated, it becomes a cloak of identity, and then it becomes almost a source of embarrassment to not be that. So it's always really good to look at the heart of all conditioned patterns, all cultural patterns, all postures, and to actually see there's often some sort of really useful insight at the core of it from the very beginning. And that insight's kind of fluid and fresh and original. It's functional. It's like, oh, this is great. Imagine what it was like to invent traffic lights. Imagine that, right? It's like, oh, wow, what a great idea. You have a traffic light. It regulates traffic. It's such a beautiful thing. And imagine how fresh and how exciting that must have felt to first operate and work with that, or to put those up. I'm just making this up in my mind, but everything that originates comes often, not always actually, from a fresh insight that actually, oh, this improves Aquarius, this elevates, this innovates how we're living, right? It's an elevation. But then most of these things at some point just become a conditioned pattern. And so we live and we live and we live and we live and we don't think outside of the box. So this other quality to Saturn anywhere is where we're reconditioning our patterns. And again, that introspection is so quality because we have to ask ourselves, who do I want to be? How do I want to feel? Where do I want to be in 10 years? What kind of life do I want? And maybe we can't fill in the specifics, but we have to really be honest with ourselves about what we might notice just isn't working. So depression is one quality that will say there's a calling for a reconditioning process. And shame is another one, where we're just so afraid of stepping outside of the constructs of the known, where we're so identified with certain parameters and certain familiarities. And so depression, shame, and judgment's another one. Strong judgment towards ourselves, towards others. Bad, wrong, look at them. It should never be this way. It has to be this way. These are often signs that at some point we've built too much of a wall around something that was really just meant to be a pointer, like this helps, this can help you, but it's become like this rigid jail that we have to live within. So much of the suffering that I feel comes from organized religion in general reflects that in a way. Again, most insights come from this very fresh, authentic, and elevated place. There's a quality of improvement that comes with it. But we so quickly build these jails, these cells that enclose us and keep us separate from one another. So Saturn in Aquarius is restructuring our consciousness, but really invites a deep introspection and willingness to step aside and become an observer, to become an observer of our own lives so we can see it with freshness. What is it like to look upon our lives with such an open-mindedness that there's not a lot of preconception for what it has to look like and where it has to go? To have that level of freshness and curiosity, that's really where all inventiveness comes from. There has to be an underlying detachment from the status quo in order to do that. the extent to which we're identified with these constructs of right and wrong, with belonging, with acceptance, with external approval, we simply won't be able to question and take those steps back. And so we won't look at where we're unhappy, where there's depression, where there's strong shame, where there's strong judgment. We'll just kind of accept it. And this is what many humans do. This is just how it has to be. No, it isn't actually. And it's really important we understand it's not how it has to be. That's to me what the devil archetype represents in the tarot, where we've mistakenly associated form as an enslavement. It's like, this is what it needs to be. A big teaching in A Course in Miracles, which I'm a disciple of, is always pointing us to understand that time is for our benefit. And that actually everything is for our benefit. We're here to be enslaved by nothing. We're here to realize what's true about life, about who we are. And that we, as a divine eternal being, as beings that are not defined or limited by any construct, it is not in our deserving, it is not respectable to who we truly are, to our holiness, to ever believe that anything is a source of psychological and emotional oppression. And so where that's present, it's not about like spiritualizing and pushing it away. It's really looking at it. This is where I have an opportunity to heal my mind, to wake up. There's a path of freedom before me that I am to understand and cultivate. And it's an unraveling process. It takes time. All things Saturn takes time because we're working with an existing momentum. But to be cultivating a mindset where we think of our life in ways that works for us in the highest way, where time and space feels like an ally and a friend, we're excited about ways to work and live within it that feel more spacious and functional and helpful. So what gets to emerge through the transit of Saturn in Aquarius are constructs of living that fundamentally innovate and improve and elevate the status quo. Any area of your life, there's an opportunity right now to build a more firm and solid structural reality that thrives. And Aquarius always speaks to a co-thriving, right? When you see a new way, that resonates with a whole other dimension of intelligence, a higher level of intelligence. And it opens up these new dendrites, new pathways, new possibilities, new communities, new connections. And community and ecosystems are formed where ways of living emerge that we couldn't have imagined. It's like planting seeds on a bunch of land, and an ecosystem grows. You can't predict the entirety of that ecosystem and what's going to happen. You can observe and actually develop some sort of objective understanding of the unfolding, and that's possible. But the point in that is that it happens on its own. It's not happening according to the rules of the conditioned mind that wants to control. There's an objective unfolding of an ecosystem, of a community, of a vibrant life that is much more evolved, much more functional. So when we put Saturn in Aquarius square in the nodal axis, we're connecting to, maybe I'll speak more about this in a future video. This feels like a really good introduction. So I'll introduce the nodal square and then I'll dive in more deeply in a future video. Anything square in the node speaks to where there is a stress for integration. The nodal axis is the portal through which we're integrating everything on an emotional level. We're allowing it to inform a sense of self. It's how we're integrating our evolutionary experience. And the transiting lunar nodes speak to that. Karmic dynamics from the past coming up to be resolved or harvested or integrated, and the ongoing evolutionary direction of the present moment. South node, north node. So doing this nodal axis work towards Scorpio, which is very psychosomatic, very psychological, very much how are we living? What are our values? What do we need? What's the deeper psychological content that we're working with? We're looking at deep shadow. A metaphor for this axis relative to the Saturn is digging deep within ourselves and saying, I need to commit to my soul. I need to commit to life. I need to find something more meaningful, deeper, something that feels authentic to my being. And we have to look at fundamental assumptions, patterns of conditioning, deeper unconscious shadow material. It's really calling us to step into greater self-knowledge. So this is my introduction. Look to see where Saturn is transiting, where this new moon is in your chart, basically in the mids of Aquarius, the mid degrees. This is where this energy is focalizing, where it's opening up. This is where we have the opportunity to be innovating and deepening in our own individuality. We're called upon to think higher, think differently. If there's pressure, take the time to recognize we're beginning a process that's going to take us far deeper than we've ever gone. This year in particular, because Saturn's involved, is inviting a certain level of mastery and deeper self-knowledge. And so the work that we're doing right now, you can really think of it as we're learning to build a solid foundation from a state of freedom and clarity of mind. Don't rush into things. Take the time to really see it clearly and unfold. Allow the synchronicities and the unfolding of life events and signals, the objective signals coming from the universal mind to lead the way, because Aquarius is archetypal. So the only intelligence that exists is the archetypal intelligence of creation itself. So when we elevate our thinking, we're in a way attuning, opening our antenna, our alignment to the universal mind. And so we receive messages from the higher mind, from universal consciousness. And it's not necessarily translatable to our conditioned consciousness. But as we open to the new, we're going to find ourselves pushing forward, and there might be that stress between the known and where our soul is going, where we're taking ourselves, but maybe don't fully understand. So as per all things Aquarius, it's good to relax the nervous system. I always think of things like Epsom salt baths, and just practices that allows us to cultivate a deeper seat of observation and witnessing consciousness. Once again, the Essentials course is open for enrollment. I'm very excited about this. I'm extending the early bird discount for another week or so while I'm in Hawaii with my family. So check it out in the description below, arimoshe.com. For those that want to enroll in the full year training program, that is also open for enrollment. You enroll now, you get 20% off of the entire program. And for those that don't want to do the live training program, we also have the self-study component. The live training program includes live classes, forum, 25 hours video content, workbook transcriptions, alumni from the past year that are currently in my practicum. They're going to be, a good handful of them are going to be a part of this course, supporting in our learning, which is really exciting. The self-study component just includes, the self-study course just includes the workbook, video content, and the transcripts, but no forum, no alumni, no live interactions. So you can join the self-study and upgrade anytime. Okay, much love to you all. Blessed new moon. Thank you for watching.